Hey there, Transformers. Welcome to Work Transformed, the podcast that tackles the ever-evolving world of product development, project chaos, and everything in between. Each episode, we'll dive into the hottest trends, unpack the latest tools, and chat with inspiring guests who are leading the charge. So, buckle up, get ready to transform your work, and let's do this.
Hey, Transformers. It is your host, Thomas Lenore and Jackie Bidner, and another episode of Work Transformed, the place for all things workplace related, and sometimes not. Today, I think it'll be pretty workplace related. You all did just miss a very exciting exchange about class action lawsuits. So if you're very interested in our perspective on those, please let us know. But today we are not talking about that. We are talking about the exciting world of iterative development. I know people are on the edge of their seats. They're like, what? Oh, I can't wait to talk about that. Well, if that's not you, unfortunately, you're going to still have to listen to it. But I think it'll be exciting. To give you some perspective, I was excited to talk about this because so often in the corporate world, people talk about the fact they want to be agile, they want to be nimble, they want to quickly get things out there and start getting feedback. And then when it comes time to do that, they're like, oh, well, this isn't a good example of a project where that's possible. Or like, because of these reasons, we can't do that. And I call BS. Like, I honestly call BS. There are very few scenarios where I think you really can't apply this iterative framework. And even when Jackie and I were talking about this, in preparation for the show, there were examples of like how we can even be more iterative in our personal lives. Like, just honestly get things done quicker. And if nothing else, it gives you a morale boost. It's like, I got a small thing done, and I can celebrate that. And now I can do another small thing. And then these small things will add up to me actually finishing the whole project. Whereas the whole project might used to be daunting. So anyway, that's what we're talking about. That's what we're going to discuss. I think it'll be good.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this topic, especially to talk through whenever we have this scenario that pops up when somebody says, oh, we can't develop that way. I feel like the first thing that happens in my brain is challenge accepted, because can't
just do the same thing. I'm like, let's see what makes you think that so I can prove you.
I know it's like them's fighting words. But really, honestly, when somebody says we can't, that probably comes from a place of nervousness or just not knowing how yet, right? So we shy away from that ambiguity. But I do love this challenge because there are ways every time to do it. You just have to figure out what that way is, depending on what you're building or what your increment is or whatever you're doing. Or if you're like me and you have a big giant home project that you have to tackle and it's overwhelming, but then you figure out those tiny pieces that give you some progress. It feels so good. I kind of want to share my real life.
No, you're jumping ahead because I got a question. Can you say something
all right, I got answers.
A lot of times when people say this, it comes from this place of
nervousness.
You said nervousness or
ambiguity. Ambiguity.
That wasn't it either.
I think you
said.
Should we rewind?
No, I think you said a place of not having the knowledge of how. It's like, why is that our default reaction? Like when we don't know how, and just say maybe this could be iterative, but I don't know how. Why do we just say, nope, that's not possible? Why is that our knee jerk?
Interesting. I don't know. Look at me saying I don't know. I think that there's something very deep here where we don't like to say I don't know, or I don't we like to have all the answers. And when we don't have all the answers,
I don't know why. Today saying I don't know has been lumped into this bucket of being vulnerable. Oh, I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to admit I don't know. And that, I think that is true now because society has made it that way. But why can't we just say I don't know how to do this. I don't know what that means. I don't know. I've never done it before. That shouldn't be vulnerable. That should just be I'm telling the truth here. I wouldn't go.
I agree.
I wouldn't go into a rocket science place. I wouldn't go work at NASA. They were like, hey, can you calculate the exit trajectory? And I'm like, sure, I'm gonna do that and put people's lives in danger. I was like, no, I don't know. I don't know how. But yet in any other field besides medicine and rocket science, people are like, I don't know how to do this, but I'm gonna act like I do. Like why? I'm sorry, this is off topic, but it just makes no sense. So
I just watched you get so fired up, but I wish you all could have seen what I saw. Because
if they ever ask me to be a rocket scientist, they can see it again.
that was my favorite thing so far in this podcast. But honestly, to like further that thought, like when I started being comfortable saying I just don't know, I think that like was a big burden off my back in my career. And because it doesn't have to be I don't know, we can't do it. It's I don't
And it's also
know.
not I don't know, comma, I am dumb. It's not that either.
No, but it's I don't know. And we could work together to figure out what is gonna work, right? Like once we
No.
do that, yeah, then we unleash the power. I say I don't know. I don't know a lot. I am not a
I actually
rocket
tell people
scientist.
I tell people all the time, especially when it's like college students or people who are new in their career, and they're like, what's one piece of advice you give me? I'm like, play the I don't know card as much as you can, because even when you're in a conversation and you think you know and you think you're connecting the dots, but you're not sure, still say it. Still say, I don't know. Because then
Oh my
people will break
gosh.
it down for you, and you will learn that you, even if you were like semi connecting the dots, you will get so much more context to better connect the dots. Now
Oh
let's
my
move back
gosh.
around.
You are so correct. I'm so sorry. Last thought on I don't know, because now I've got we should do a full podcast on I just saying you don't know stuff.
Well, I mean, it's not too late. The people are thinking that they're going to work on about iteration. They already were like, I don't know what that is. I don't know that I care. We can switch it.
no, we
Real
can
time
keep
opera right
talking
now.
about it.
I can talk about this for 30 to 40 minutes. I can.
Oh my goodness. Well, I was just going to share a brief story that piggybacks off of what you said. Like playing the I don't know card is so helpful when you're talking to a lot of technical people or people that work in different business units from each other. Because you are able to then glean some of that like really crisp detail very clearly if you say, I don't know. And then you'll be able to communicate it back to others in a way that, people can understand. So, for example, my last job, I coined the phrase, can you please put this in Jackie terms? Because I said, I don't know, or I'm not following, or I need you to slow down because this isn't clear to me so many times. But really, what ended up happening, what I was doing was teaching people how to speak to each other in these different ways. Like my tech guys could then like break it down to simple terms so that our sales guys could understand why this was important. And our sales guys could then communicate back like, whoa, here's the impacts to the company. And like, all I would say is, I don't know, put that in Jackie terms. Can you put it in Jackie terms?
So, Jackie, what are we talking about here? Because I can plus one that, or I can go back to our other topic. But I just know this is the moment of truth.
Oh boy.
What are we going to talk about here?
Well, I think we could keep going with our iterations discussion. It's one of the big challenges that we as professionals in Agile, Scrum, project management come across, and that is when you're breaking down the work or you're breaking down what you need to do. We see this challenge all the time, and a very common response to let's break this down into small, bite-sized chunks. We will get pushback. You will get pushback from teams that say we can't do it that way. And this is where we step in and we it's our time to shine because we push back and say, why not? What happens if we do it this way? What are the challenges with doing it this way? And like coming to a creative place to come up with this way to work iteratively. But I guess, Thomas, before we even move forward with the iterative conversation, we know one of the biggest challenges now. What does it even mean to work iteratively? Do we know?
I'm giving you a death stare because you got me. You told me we we're going to talk about the empowering others to say they don't know, and now you're going back to iterative. That's okay. Let's go. Let's rewind again. Let me pull out my notes that I put away. Let's jump in. So, what does it mean to work iteratively? for me, it's really figuring out what is the smallest thing of value that you can produce, and then just doing that thing. Sometimes, let's give an example.
Yes.
A very simple example that is applicable to anyone across industry. You are making dinner. You're making Thanksgiving dinner. And you're like, oh my God, this is so difficult. And people are not gonna like this example because I'm like, well, that one's so easy. Obviously, you can do that. But people are like, that is so much work. I gotta make turkey. I gotta make stuffing or dressing. I gotta make macaroni, mashed potatoes. I gotta make all these different things. And it's like the first question I'll ask an older person who cooks Thanksgiving dinner for their extended family, how can you do this iteratively? They're going to say the iconic age-old, you can't. It's not possible. I just got to get in there and start seasoning and cooking and seasoning, and like it'll just all come together. And it's like, that's the easiest way to go. There's nothing I can do iteratively here. And, and I couldn't be more incorrect. And sometimes we take for granted like the small things that you can do iteratively. Like it's like, okay, well the smallest thing you can do that would be valuable is just writing out your menu and sequencing out like what do I need to make first? What do I need to make last? Like just creating a plan is the first thing that you could do toward an iterative delivery of the meal. And it does bring value. Like people are like, well, that's a waste of time. I just could get started cooking. No, because if you start cooking and cooking in the wrong order, and the oven's occupied when you need to put the pie in, but the turkey's taking too long because you didn't think about it. Like the plan is already one thing of value that you can deliver that gets you a step toward delivering the meal more iteratively.
I love that. I love this Thanksgiving dinner. I'm coming to your house this year for Thanksgiving.
Well, I didn't know I could cook the things. I just know how to help the person cooking. That's why I'm interviewing the cook.
You make the menu, we'll all deploy and execute. I love that you talked about like writing out this menu and then the things that you're going to be doing for this Thanksgiving dinner. You're going to have some sort of semblance of repeatable tasks, right? Some of your dishes need prep. Some of your dishes need mixing. Some of your dishes need cook time, right? There's all these like repeatable steps that all of them have to kind of follow and flow. And you might focus on, first I am going to make, I don't know, what's a Thanksgiving dinner? Stuffing. I'm going to get all my ingredients together for the stuffing because I'm going to need that. Ooh, dependencies. I'm going to need that when I put the turkey in because I like to put a little stuffing in my turkey. But yeah, this sense of like having... We don't do that either. I don't know why I said that.
I believe I'm like, oh wow, I'm really working on this turkey. I just put it in there empty.
Now our stuffing is separate, but it is delightful. But anyway, this building on what was previously done, these repeatable tasks, being able to kind of like check things as you go, right? Understanding the value that's being delivered. And then if it's not salty enough, you can add this salt. You don't want a bland Thanksgiving dinner. If it's too salty, you mess
that
up.
example of like, you're like, oh, let's think about the stuffing. I need to cut up the ingredients. I need to prep. If you made the plan, it actually will trigger something for you. So like, each thing of value is valuable, not in the fact that like it is the finished product, because like the menu, for example, or the step-by-step plan that you put together. No one's gonna take this piece of paper off the counter in the kitchen and like put it in their mouth and be like, this tastes good. Like that. I think sometimes we get value convoluted with like delivering something that people will pay for. The value is sometimes internal. It's like internal learning, internal discovery, alignment. Like we thought we all understood what was going on, but then we made the plan and we now say like, oh no, what I thought you meant by dressing or stuffing was this, and what you really have described is this other thing that I've never heard of. And those like, that is valuable. But in putting that plan together, you might realize I need onion, like diced up onion for my dressing. I need diced up onion for my casserole. Like I'm struggling to think of ideas. Like I need onion for 3 things, and so instead of cutting onion 3 times, which is a waste of time, I can cut all this onion at once and make sure I cut enough that it accommodates all my meals. And so once I'm done cutting up the onions, cutting up the celery, cutting up the carrots, cutting up all these different vegetables that I need, that has already brought value. Again, I can't just serve the raw vegetables because that doesn't make sense. No one's eating a couple of carrots probably. that are wrong. But like, it is valuable because now it saves me time in the future. Like, I can just cook and focus on cooking versus cooking and prepping at the same time. And so, again, this is an overly simplistic example, but I think it helps to illustrate the fact that, like, even things that doesn't feel like I can't cook the turkey 5 weeks in advance. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm sure someone does cook their turkey way in advance. It's super dry and like, but even though it seems like I probably couldn't cook the meal in advance, there are tons of things you could do in advance in pieces that help bring together the final product. So
I
that's why I
think
want
what's standing out to me is there is a very clear message that there's more than one way to cook this Thanksgiving dinner. And if I went into it with, we can't do this iteratively, we only can do it this one way, like that's your argument back, is there are many ways to get from point A to point B, and we have to figure out what works well for this group and this team. We have to make sure that we can, inspect our stuff as we go, because we don't want a disgusting dinner. But we also want to make sure we have the ability to adapt if something goes wrong, right? And so when we talk about...
talk about that.
Yeah, all right.
I didn't touch on that at all. Adapt if something goes wrong.
Yeah, so with I'll try to stick with this Thanksgiving dinner example, but if
I got confidence.
You got confidence that I can... Let's say we're prepping our Thanksgiving dinner and we are inspecting it as we go and we have our plan and something goes wrong. Let's pretend, let's do like a big thing that goes wrong. So let's pretend we're cooking the turkey the day before. I've actually only done that one time and it was wildly successful, so highly recommend. But anyway, let's say you're cooking the turkey the day before. You've got that turkey in the oven and it's been cooking for hours and hours and like nothing's happening. And then you realize, boom, your oven's broken. What do we do?
4 years ago. Thankfully, it happened on Thanksgiving Day and it was at the end of the cooking. So like, everything was done, but my oven did break.
What? I did not even know this. Man, wasn't I supposed to put like a psychic on my resume a few podcast episodes back? This is a sign.
I don't know if you're at the level yet. Keep working on it.
I'll keep working. So what I was going to say though is, all right, so if your oven breaks while it's cooking the turkey, you have an opportunity now to adapt because you've been working at this, you've been inspecting what's going on, you're focused on this turkey element, your turkey iteration of your Thanksgiving dinner. Something that I would do in this scenario is think about what other ways can I cook this turkey. And my solution would be to fire up the grill, turn that grill on, make my grill into an oven, get that turkey in there. And
we smoke our turkey almost like by default now. Like that is so good. Like that's something that like also requires a fair bit of advance notice. Cause like if you don't have your grill out, if you don't have any charcoal or any wood, because on Thanksgiving Day very few things are open, so it's like you can't really do anything at that point. Either your oven works or it doesn't. But because like you said, you're doing it the day before, you have the time, even though it's going to be like still horrible conditions because the stores are going to be jam packed. Like you can still go to the store because it's the day before Thanksgiving and they're still open. And like you can like you said, you can adapt to the changing conditions. When you have to do this big bang approach, the first thing that goes wrong throws everything off because you're like, there is no going back. There's no alternatives. Like we're too far into this to pivot.
Let me give you another pivot option. So let's say it is Thanksgiving Day, Thomas, and you're cooking your turkey and your oven breaks and the stores are all closed. And how are you you can't fire up your grill because...
I'm going to go chop down the tree then.
No, you're going to call your friend Jackie, who always seems to have charcoal on hand because that is her preferred grilling way. And you're going to say, hey, can you spare some charcoal? And I'm going to say, hey, yes.
Why can't I just go in my backyard, cut down one of these pesky trees, get my axe out, and there we go.
Okay, you can... You know what? You can.
I don't have an axe though, so I would still there would be more when I'd have to go around the neighborhood asking me, you have an axe.
Come over and get the axe.
I'm an axe murderer, and it actually probably would be better to just call you. That's
yeah, you
true.
should probably call me. Yeah. But again, there's other ways to solve this problem. There's all these ways to solve these challenges, and when we talk about development, there's also a bunch of ways to solve the challenge of working incrementally in iteratively and incrementally to make sure that you're able to do these things as you go, to check your work as you go.
So I think
So,
we gave them a great example, but I think, and it was intentionally overly simplistic and like really trivial so that everyone can understand it. But like in the real world, I have worked on projects before where I myself was stumped. It was like, although I'm advocating for us to do this iteratively, I am also not sure what that looks like. So what do we do? Like, let's say you're on this really big project, you're building out a new application, there's no infrastructure, there's no nothing. Like you're literally starting from scratch. Like, how do you even approach facilitating a conversation around doing it a different way? Because a lot of times that's when I really see people push back. They're like, there's no infrastructure. I can't build
yeah.
AWS clusters iteratively. I can't spin up a backend service iteratively. Like I just have to like build everything from soup to nuts. Like how do I do this? So how
Yeah.
do you suggest we even approach those conversations?
One of the ways that I usually tend to approach those conversations is not thinking about the end state production launch, but I start thinking about what are some of the little things that we can test along the way, right? So if we need to stand up an environment, how do we know it's stood up? How can we test it? How do we prove it? Show me these types of things. Because I know a lot of times with some of these things we're building, we can't have them like live in production, or they need to be like hidden behind a feature flag or something. But what is that minimum test that you could do to know that you're still on the right track? So if you're trying to set up like a whole infrastructure, how can you tell that, your APIs are talking to each other, right? Do you got a test for that? Or, do you have a test to make sure like if you click here, what happens on your screen, right? It doesn't have to be so complicated to just prove out that you're on the right track.
It
And it
almost
also
sounds like you're describing TDD, test
ah
driven. For those who don't know.
test driven development. I kind of am a little bit, I suppose. So test driven development is so cool. I actually facilitated a session on it. It was something that I learned at the Agile conference in 2019. But really what you do during that is you write the smallest amount of code and then you write the test for it and you immediately check it, and it really gives you some insights into if you're on the right track or if something that you previously wrote is now failing. Like it really gives you that almost real-time ability to check your work as you go, which decreases the risk of having a failure in production. It increases the quickness that you can fix something if it does go out and it's busted. But it's such a cool thing. And I think that's where the testing mindset might come from, is if I can't see how this big project end to end can be broken down into little increments, then let me think about what I could test. How do I test along the way?
So that actually reminds me of a different framework I have. If you ever hear a little baby in the background, my son has come to join us. And he's
Hello.
having a little piece of paper. Oh, he said hello. Um, one of the things I've done that has been super successful as well is like asking where are the things that we don't know. Like there's inevitably with any project. Okay, these little rappers kind of wild. Like with
Anytime
any
our kids
project,
come, I get so excited. And I'm like, look, it's a baby saying hi. Look.
well, I don't. I still get anxious, but I'm working
I
on
know.
it. As I say, I
Mm-hmm.
get the light.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's always something that like some unknown. They're like, well, I don't know if if users will even feel like this is the right solution. I don't know if we can even connect our service to that application. I don't know if I'm like, great. Well, let's work on that as an iteration. Like, let's just work on proving out that this is possible or this is doable, because that brings value. Because if the answer is no, there's no technical way that we can do this, then we actually need to pivot and like re-architect the project or come up with a different solution. And so we don't want to put all our eggs in the basket that doesn't work. And so it's like, that's another strategy I've had. Sometimes it's like, hey, instead of trying to figure out what are small baby steps we can take to get there, let's just figure out where we already know that there's a huge question mark looming. And let's just start like, what are all the things we need to do just to be able to get to the point where we can say yes or no, we can figure this part out.
My
And like that
favorite
is
too. is like, let's just try to connect it and see what happens, right? Like, I want to see what errors get thrown. I want to see what fails, right? Like, especially if you're like trying to connect two systems, you could spend a very, very large amount of time trying to map out all of the different fields that go from point A and point B. And you should do that to a degree. But if you find yourself now swirling because you're worried, because you don't have all the requirements yet, and you haven't even tried anything, like, maybe experiment a bit, give it a try, see if it fails. It might be easier than you think. Probably not, but
Absolutely.
you know.
But I think the problem is when you're not working this incremental mindset, when you're trying to figure out how do we build the whole thing at once, you're putting so much time and effort into something that could be, I hate to say it because it makes people anxious, like could be a waste of time.
Mhm.
And then alternatively, you are putting so much time and effort into something that could yield a lot of rework. Like by the time you get to the point of failure, you may have invested 40 or 50% of your project timeline into it, 50 or 60% of your budget into it. And now you're like, oh, we have to re-architect. And now some of the stuff we did doesn't make sense anymore. And so
That
like,
is interesting because what you're saying just kind of sparked that idea about like that wasted time. Like, you might be building the right thing, but if you aren't looking at it again iteratively, or your customer doesn't get to see it until the very, very end, you may miss an opportunity to deliver something earlier that they actually want versus like waiting for all the bells and whistles to be on it. I just think that's it's such a cool thing to think through, and it's something that I don't see implemented as often as I think that I would love to see it. Like, it's how early we get whoever that end user is in front of what's happening, because it's like the whole car example. Like, they didn't need a car, they needed something to get them from point A to point B, and the bike was the thing that they wanted, but we didn't show that to them. Like, we went way off into the abyss and made the craziest DeLorean with, doors that open upwards and
yep.
a flux
And I've
capacitor.
actually seen that in practice. Not a DeLorean. I mean, I've seen a replica of one. But I've seen us like build things and like when it got deployed, people like, this actually is too much. It's like, because I was on a team that built an application once. They were like trying to accommodate all the feedback that they got. And so it was really cool because they really did care about the user. But they deployed so much in the first version that people were like, this costs 50 buttons. Like, I can't use this because I really just don't even understand how to use it. Like, there's just so many
Yeah.
options and it's overload. So you can. And the thing, I love the fact that you brought the customer aspect into it because this is another approach I use. What's the smallest thing we can show to a customer and get feedback? And often when I ask that, what that translates to for people is what is the smallest feature we can build and
Uh-huh.
deploy that they can use? And I said, those are not the same question. Something
Mhm.
that is usable and provides immediate value to the customer may be larger than the smallest thing that we can show them and get feedback. Because the smallest thing we can show them could be a wireframe. It is a non technical wireframe. They can't click on it or anything. It is a picture of what could be. And they can
Yep.
give us feedback. Nope, I hate it, or yep, I love it. But again, you have to make sure that when you're asking the question, you don't just take the first answer you get back from the team, because again, what they heard and what you said may not be the same thing. And it's not because they are trying to be difficult. It's just like they thought you said, what could they build that they can give to the customer? And I'm asking, what can we show them and start getting
Yes.
feedback? And like, that's another way to build iteratively. It's like, start with a wireframe. The wireframe
Yeah.
passes the sniff test. Start with, like a interactive prototype that passes the sniff test, and like work to a higher degree of fidelity. That's totally an option.
I feel like there's always been something a little missing with wireframes and prototypes, and that is like making sure the entire team like knows how we're going to present the wireframe and knows how we're going to present this prototype and knows when it gets presented and knows immediately what that feedback is, right? Because a lot of times everybody's off in their own world, doing a good job at their jobs, just executing away. And we don't take that pause to say, hey, this is what they thought, or hey, this is what the direction is now. And um, I just like it when everybody has that opportunity to hear who's benefiting from what we're building and then how they would love to see that benefit play out.
Oh, I agree. And I think one of the things, the challenges is like, we talk about feedback, but like, who's getting this feedback? Is the team getting the feedback or is one person getting the feedback? And I realize that
Right.
like every person on the team can't be in every meeting with the client. Like, that's overwhelming. But are we able to record it so that the team can listen to it? Because again, I am one person and what the client says and what I hear could not be one to one. The client might have said, this is great, but I need more for me to be able to use it. And if it's a prototype or a wireframe, then obviously they need more. Like this is just V1. But what I might have heard as the person who's translating that back to the team is they didn't like it. It wasn't good enough for them, which is not quite what they said. And so like that's why it's important to get the team's perspective and to let them feel like they are a part of the process. It's both because it helps build better products and because it helps build better morale.
So, to say all of the things that we just said recently in a simpler way, is make sure those feedback loops are in place and we're using them because they're super helpful. The other thing that I just thought about, and we talked about this a lot in a previous podcast, but when you told me the example of listening to the customer feedback and delivering too many features as a response, like if you are doing this thing while you're working iteratively, if you're also prioritizing your features, you can
Boom, boom,
draw a
boom,
line. Boop,
boom.
boop, 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 boop. You could draw a line in the sand and say, I want to deliver these 3 features and then put it back in front of the customer. And then you move on. And that allows you the ability to pivot on the priority of the next features coming up because maybe you've satisfied a requirement that doesn't have as much urgency tied to it. And then you could change your tactical direction to build out this product, this increment, in the way that's going to earn it the most value overall. So a lot of things go into working incrementally. I think that we should also remember, and good for all of us. We've got podcasts on these topics.
Well, I got something that came up that I thought about. Sometimes it's not the people on the ground who you usually convince. Like I've worked with teams before who like they were totally bought it. They were like, yeah, we could have did this totally different, but like our boss told us that we needed to do it like this. Like how do you get the hearts and minds of the leadership team bought into this approach? Because in all fairness, a lot of times the leadership team is getting pressure. They're like, we got to hit sales numbers. We got to do this. We got to do that. It's like they're not concerned about wireframes and prototypes and stuff like that. And as far as like, it's not getting them any money. They need real hard dollars and cents. So like, how do you get them bought in?
That is the $1 million question. And if I had a 1-sentence answer, I'd be a millionaire. I think there's a couple of things that can happen. If you have a way to clearly articulate kind of the measure of the thing that you're building or the revenue estimated or the cost savings, I think talking in terms of dollars helps people understand what their impact could be. Whether it's, I mean, it could be operational savings, right? It could be a number of different things. But I also, I'm not sure. I think our guest
Well,
knows, though. He's
but
very
no,
much trying. He's trying.
I
He's
don't
trying
think
to
you
tell
know
us.
anything about this topic. But one of the things I was curious if you were going to say it. I didn't think you were, but sometimes it's not worth even trying, in my opinion. If you can figure out a way to meet their timeline and or expectations, but by operating in a different way, sometimes it's better to just do it and like not say it. Because the goal of iterative development is not to take longer. And I think that's what some people hear. They're like, well, if I take all these steps, it's going to take way longer. And the goal is not. The goal is to just deliver things that are more compelling and more valuable. And sometimes in a shorter timeline, and not shorter because like we work harder or get things done faster, shorter because like we learn some scope is not necessary, so we can cut it, or we learn that like this is good enough, so we can just move on. And so like we could actually get things out the door quicker in the end. And so like sometimes it's like, how can we as a team show them that we're delivering value? So like have something to show them every time they ask what's the progress without having to necessarily ask them for permission. Because if we're able to do this and do this successfully and deliver something that delights the customer, then they're not going to care. If anything, they're going to be like, how did you get this done so well? And like that will become the standard. So I'm sure there are lots of things that you can do, like talk and business speak to them. But like sometimes if you just don't have the time, just do it.
I was gonna say, if your teams have the autonomy to work in the way that works best for them, like that, then you have the freedom to just do it, right? Just do it. The other thing that I thought of while you were talking about this is like not only can you show value, like right, because you're gonna be able to show off some stuff quickly, but you could
Uh-huh.
also show value if you find something that was going to be like detrimental if you waited, right? Like, so if you like, you might be able to find a big issue early, communicate it early so everyone's aware. Nobody likes to be surprised by critical bugs and things like that. But if you find those things early because you're working iteratively, then you have this ability to communicate those things early and have more support as you solve them, right? Because what if you can't meet your timeline because you found out that, you know, this huge bug existed, but you found it, a quarter of the way into the project versus the day before it was supposed to be released, right? Which scenario goes over better? Probably
Well, I
not the
think that
latter.
I think that inherently pulls in this other Scrum practice of having these things called sprint reviews or iteration reviews or something. But I think especially once you've done this for a little bit of time, it's helpful to like have these areas where you can like showcase the learnings and the outcomes because to the point you're making, it only is valuable if the leaders are aware. Like it's only valuable that we caught this bug so much earlier if someone knows that we caught this bug so much earlier. And sometimes there's not a good way of sh- sharing that information if
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
have this like recurring forum. And so sometimes I think that is another piece that gets missed. It's like the team is not feeling great about moving to this area of development process because even though there are a ton of wins, no one's celebrating them with them because no one knows that they happened.
That's true. And it also like if you're afraid to bring up something that went wrong, I think then maybe you're not working iteratively enough because it should be very open flow conversation, right? Like, hey,
Mhm.
this great thing happened. Yay, yay. Or hey, this crazy, horrible thing happened, but here's how we solved it. Or here's how we're solving it currently. Or
Yeah.
here's the impacts, right? Like people want to know that stuff. Um, oh, iterations.
I think the long and short of it is just try. There's no right or wrong. Like as you've heard, there's no right or wrong mechanism to do it. There are some that I think are not as good as others, but when you're starting out, like that's okay. Even if it's not the best way, like just start. And I think you will quickly notice that there are a lot of upsides to it, and the more you do it, the easier it'll become.
This is true. And you can even adopt it in your own life.
Oh yeah, you didn't even get to the personal side, sis.
I know. Well, so I had a recent like home project pop up and I almost kind of organically tackled it. It's still being tackled. But I've tackled it iteratively and I want to kind of talk about it a little bit because it goes along with some of the themes that we've been saying. So, my son has decided that he very much loves the guest room over his bedroom and he wants to do a room swap. And the guest room is a fully functioning bedroom with a bed and an office desk and all of that wonderful stuff that goes in your guest room.
Oh,
And
that's such a fancy place. A bed?
I know. But so here's the thing that needs to happen. We need to do this room swap. In the room swap, my son is going to be getting a new like bed set up. He's going to get like a loft bed that's going to be like a bunk bed situation for him. And so one of the things I could have done was be completely overwhelmed by the amount of things I have to move back and forth and just like get analysis paralysis and not even start. Or I decided like I could do this in chunks. I could do this in an iterative way where I'm building this brand new bedroom while still being able to utilize some of the things in the old bedroom. And I made a plan. So I made my menu, my Thanksgiving menu room swap plan. And I chose to start with things that were very approachable that I could use still when I was done moving them. So the first part of my first sprint, I guess, if you will, was to move the dresser from his bedroom to the new room and take out the bookshelf and put that in his old room. And I was able to do that in less than a day. And the great thing is now he's got his dresser in what's going to be his new room. It is fully functional. He can get his clothes. We put it in a location, and he approved it, right? We tested it. We got our sign off, and now we're on the next iteration, which was to move his smaller bookshelf into the room and me to move the office desk out of the room. And like all of these things were easy to tackle in the scope of an hour or two. And I got to show off the work that was done and make sure we're on the right track for getting the room swap done. Now we got to do a little bit of our heavy lifting, get the bed swapped out, which is going to take more muscles than I have, but that's the next step. And we get to do all of these things.
That's
Yes.
so smart though, because you have a bed. Like I'm sorry, it just
I have a bed.
it's a simple thing, but it's just like in my mind, and as an agile practitioner who just told you how much they love this thing, I would have said, I got to do this. I got to dedicate a day, and I got to do everything. I got to break down the current bedroom. I got to break down the other bedroom. I got to swap them over. I got to set them both back up. Like that is success, and that's the minimum. That's the only way it can work. I would not have said he has a bed. That room has a bed. Okay, well then we can swap like some of the like peripheral things first to make it more comfortable. Like we like do the rest. Like it just that's where even sometimes when you have the best of intentions without having someone to push you, you can still make less than optimal decisions.
Or that pause to think through, okay, what makes sense? What's the easiest thing? And honestly, I want to go back to something that you had said way in the beginning. And that is one of the benefits of working in an iteration is that there is like this almost inherent morale boost that happens. When you get something done, you feel good about it. When I moved it, I was like, I moved that dresser and that bookshelf by myself. I got it all done. And I was just like, family, come look. Woo, it's done. I feel so good. Time to take a break or whatever it was. Because honestly, I've been having a big challenge trying to find a whole day to dedicate all at once to get this room swapped done. And so it's been kind of nice to work in these little tiny iterations and build my progress. And I started with the right stuff too, because my last iteration that I have prioritized is like moving all the decorations, right? The different room decorations. And while that seems exciting and maybe like the thing that I want to start with, it's not going to give me the most value to start there. Because what if I decide the bed goes against a different wall? It's going to change. It's going to change where I put the decor. Like, so I don't want to do the rework. That's it. When you work iteratively, you're just actually a very smart and possibly lazy person who doesn't want to do rework. Ha ha. Just kidding.
Something excited.
I know, he's so cute.
I think we're at the wrap-up point. So what are our takeaways?
These notes today are the most wild because we were going all over. So some takeaways. Working in iterations, meaning you are delivering increments of value so that you can show off your work as you go and adapt as you go. So first benefit is that inherent morale boost. As you get something small done, you could call it done, and that makes you feel good on the inside. We also know as Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, project program managers, we are going to come across the scenario where when we are breaking down our menu or breaking down our work, we are going to have folks that struggle with ambiguity and nervousness around breaking things down smaller, and you are going to get the we can't do it that way. Accept the challenge, use your powerful questions, and figure out what are some of those things that you can maybe test. Use testing as an option. What are some of those things that you could put in front of your customer to show it off? Maybe like a wireframe or something. We talked a little bit about pulling in or getting buy-in from our leadership teams. If you have autonomy to just deliver, then you don't need that buy-in. If you don't have as much autonomy and you need some extra support, try to speak in terms that are going to motivate them. What's going to motivate those leaders? Find that out and then use that to your advantage. We also had a special guest, and earlier you could hear our baby friend saying hi. I think he has all the answers. He just can't communicate them quite yet. Um, there is also value in being able to celebrate some of those things you get done, as well as bringing up issues earlier and often so that those can be communicated and solved in a timely fashion without disrupting what would have been disrupted if you waited till the end. Thomas, I don't know what else I have missed here. I said words like feature flags and definition of value. Um, what else?
I think there are a couple things we can probably link to in the description box. We can probably link to like just the test-driven development philosophy framework so that folks who are familiar can follow up on that. We can link to an article about feature flags just in case folks are not familiar with that. I think there's a lot to learn here, but the thing is just try something and see what works. What works for me and my teams might not work exactly for you and your teams. It's about getting into a rhythm of what your team has the skills, knowledge, and interest in doing, and then trying it. So, don't get discouraged. And at the end of the day, everything will work out. I guarantee everything will work out. It's just like how smooth will things go will depend on how small can you break things down to like experiment and test.
And
So
with
with that,
that, the
yeah,
final closing thought
give
is
it
if
to
you
us.
ever find yourself on Thanksgiving with a broken oven, remember to call your friend Jackie, who will give you charcoal and a grill if you need.
I'm also purchasing an axe, so if you just would like to cut down one of the many trees in your neighborhood, you can reach out to me, and I will loan you one. But it is pick up only. I don't deliver it. For some, I think that's it, y'all. It has been a wild ride today. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you don't, just tell yourself you did. And if you did, please share, like, subscribe, whatever it is, because I don't want you to miss a future episode. This is Work Transformed. I hope you've left a little bit more transformed than you arrived.
I hope you left smiling a little more than when you've arrived as well. Bye.
Bye.